So I wanted to start with this quote from a book that we've talked about, and we talked about it a while ago. The book is about a year and a half old. It is a magnificent piece of work from a Christian theologian about the current cultural landscape. It's Carl Trueman's book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. So that baby's too distracting. All right, here we go. So we talk about this week in woke and so forth, and we use that language just to kind of describe this worldview that's rising in our culture. This book deals with it in depth. He's recently put out, this is a thick book to go through. It's very good. If you're interested in this stuff, I highly recommend it. He has recently published a much more accessible, shorter version of the book. I can't remember it's got a different title, but it's the same author, and it looks very similar, the cover does. So if you'd rather not read a 450-page book and rather read a 150-page book, that second one's for you. But he's phenomenal on this stuff. And so inside of his book, he talks about the rise of this, sovereignty of the individual. We've used this phrase from time to time. Expressive individualism, this is a piece of what he says. The triumph of the therapeutic represents the advent of the expressive individual as the normative type of human being and of the relativizing of all meaning and all truth to personal taste. So what's happening in the culture is the rise of the importance of the individual and the supreme importance of every individual needing to be able to express themselves without boundaries and without limitations. He said what that does to us is it relativizes all meaning and all truth to personal taste. So when we talk about relativism, we typically think in moral terms. We tend to think in religious terms. Morality is relative. People have different views about religion, and no one can really tell the truth about it, so that's all relative also. When he uses the word all, he means all, and he's absolutely right. All forms of meaning and truth now have been subjugated to personal taste. So then, I get this link texted to me. You can go to the next slide there, Meg. Thank you. All right. So this link came out of an online science magazine called Wired Magazine. So it's popular level science writing, but it's serious science writing. It's not, your academic scientific journal, but you can find a lot in the world of the broader world of technology and science in Wired Magazine. So this is May 8th of this year. Now, seriously, if history lasts long enough to reflect on this cultural moment, things like this are going to be bizarre cultural artifacts. People are going to sit around tables going, how did these people think they were saying anything meaningful at all? Almost every sentence that I have for you up there is utterly and completely meaningless, totally ridiculous. But all of this is taken so seriously, it comes from a lecturer, a PhD lecturer at MIT. Science is redefining motherhood. If only society would let it. What a pile of hooey. So we Christians have heard this for so long. You people are anti-science. The foundation of new atheism 10, 15, 20 years ago was science. And now that this worldview has completely flushed actual science down the toilet, they need to continue to use the word, but to use it to support this worldview that they're upholding. So if we want to change the notion of who can be a mother and give birth to children, we have to say something like, well, you people don't understand it yet, but science is redefining motherhood. It's time to decouple maternity from womanhood. It is about time. Recent advances in fertility science are helping pave the way toward inclusivity. Do you know what those recent advances in science are? You know what they mean by that? It's not just the physical surgeries and the hormone therapy. They are now developing ways to put uteruses into men. So they're literally working on ways so that men can be fertile. And none of this works. All of this is Frankenstein. All of this is abuse, really. It's all very unscientific. So again, I told you, if Jesus tarries 7 generations from now, people are going to look at this sentence and go, who believed this? Carl, a PhD and lecturer at MIT, gave birth to both of his children, and despite being the one with the baby bump, he was routinely asked to wait outside while the nurses attended to his not pregnant wife. People were unable, he says, to see both a man and a pregnant body. So you feel the oppression there, right? You feel the oppression and the need for technology to take care of inclusivity for us. You just feel that oppression. A man walks in, so it's a transsexual male. Carl is a biological female who's living as a male. That's what you discover pretty quickly inside. That's sentence 1 and 2 of this story. A couple of paragraphs later, I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not making this stuff up. Motherhood, like gender, is a social construct. It exists because humans agree that it exists. What did Carl Trueman just tell us? That this kind of worldview, that an individual should be allowed to express themselves however they want to, means that we have put all truth and meaning for everything in the world subservient to personal taste. So now they're saying motherhood is made up by cultures. It is a cultural construct, and we've done it. Listen to the language of oppression again. We've done it to oppress non-females who want to be mothers. We create constructs as a means of ordering the world and attempting to control it. They are useful for organizing our thoughts. They become extremely dangerous when we mistake them for reality. So when you treat mothers as moms or potential mothers, women as potential mothers, that can be extremely dangerous because then we're mistaking that vocabulary for reality. All right? We've said it before, this worldview is not trying to fix social justice issues around the fringes and tweak some things here and there. It's going straight for the heart of reality itself. And friends, just quite frankly, the denial of reality, the level of denial of reality that this takes is a denial of God's order, of clear order that God has created around us. And it doesn't take divine revelation to see these things. It's just clear kinds of things going on that God has created around us. So this is a clear denial of God's reality. And before we get into the next little section here about a very similar kind of thing, but more along the pro-choice, pro-life kind of argument that's taking place in our culture right now, I just want to kind of reiterate this. We've touched on this a couple of times, but this keeps coming to mind when I read this kind of stuff and I see this kind of stuff. So the biblical witness about the only distinction God created in the human race is God created the male and female. That's the only biblical distinction. Every other difference or distinction that exists between human beings is the result of the fall plus time. So the division, the social division or the enmity that exists between men and women, that's the result of the fall, okay? A few chapters later in the book of Genesis, chapter 11, you've got the Tower of Babel, and because of their hubris and their pride and what they thought they were capable of, God divides their languages and they scatter. And then we've got the development of nations and ethnicities and kingdoms. It's the result of the fall and of judgment. And so what this worldview is doing is it is trying to destroy the one distinction God created between us, male and female, and create every other distinction, treating it as if they are the essential distinctions. When all of those other distinctions are the result of our sin, that's why those other divisions exist. So the Apostle Paul in the book of Ephesians says, Christ came and tore those walls of hostility down, killing the hostility that existed between those other groups of people. But this kind of garbage takes the one distinction God creates it and flushes it down the toilet, and then turns all the rest of them into essential distinctions that are perpetually at odds with each other. There's no getting right. You're perpetually at odds with people. Yes. It is clear that this entire worldview is shaking its fist at God. That this is how God's created things. Well, we have the technology now. Science has advanced beyond this whole chromosomal, roadblock. And we should be able to fix this. And we'll fix inequity along the way as well. So it is. We're shaking our fists at God, saying our biological and computer technologies will be able to fix all of this stuff that God did wrong or has been given to us wrong. There's no science. No. This person is not genetically, yes. There is no science. But, yeah. Let's be careful, you white people, all right? Let's be careful. So, the biblical witness on male and female, right? The next thing we're going to deal with, the biblical witness on children. So, the biblical witness on children is clear. The first command about children is fill the world with them. Be fruitful and multiply. And you all will steward God's creation. You'll steward God's creation. That's the first command. There is no other command in Scripture that eventually says, okay, that's about enough. We need to have fewer of you people, and we need to slow down a little bit because I think we're straining the world's resources. There's not even a hint of that in Scripture. The full quiver, the full home, the blessed person, the blessed home, that is the ubiquitous, clear, unequivocal witness of Scripture regarding kids. The enemy's version of children is also clear and unequivocal in Scripture, and it is, sacrifice your children to me. Kill them in the arms of the god Molech. It is the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He roars around like a lion looking to literally devour people. That's the enemy's job with children. God's view of children is completely different. And so I want to talk about this a little bit because more and more people who are in the broader sort of camp of Christianity are sticking their necks out more and more and more, angry at the Supreme Court decision that may overturn Roe v. Wade. But this individual expressivism in the current abortion debate, here's some stuff that's happening. I think one of the horrific results of expressive individualism is that there's a new obligation placed on others and the state to make sure that I can make whatever decisions I want to make. So you go back to the transgender issue. You're not going to pay for that. The state's going to pay for that. Medicare, Medicaid, they're going to pay for that. The military is going to pay for that. I have the right to make this decision. I have no responsibilities because of the decision. Someone else is going to have to pay for this for me. This is going to show up inside of the pro-choice debate right now as well. A lot of the pro-choice rhetoric going on right now, both inside and outside the church, has slung mud by demanding that pro-lifers become responsible for every, and this is the phrase that you see more and more, you read these articles, you hear these podcasts, forced birth. So someone who identifies as female conceives a child. A woman conceives a child, and according to this rhetoric, and we're going to read somebody who's going to say exactly this, according to this rhetoric, conception to birth is forced birth. Meaning the presumption in the pro-life point of view right now is you should be allowed at the taxpayer's dollar to get rid of that child. If you're not allowed to do that on someone else's dime, it is a forced birth. So the natural process of conception to birth now has become an act of oppression. Isn't that amazing how this vocabulary works? So even if you want to put forward a kind of live and let live set of laws, a status quo kind of thing when it comes to the pro-choice, pro-life debate, we can't do that because that actually privileges people of power. Any sort of expectation of individual responsibility also privileges people of power, because only if you already have social power can you exercise responsibility, and it is a form of oppression to expect other people to step up and be responsible for their actions, right? So the behavior we prefer in their vernacular, consistent with whatever their view of social justice or anti-racism is, needs to be coerced in order to have a just society. Not allowed, but coerced. It has to happen. You have to bake the cake. You can't go across the street to the other bakery. That person has to bake your cake, okay? This is the world of expressive individualism. How many of you have heard of Jenn Hatmaker? Okay, good. There's only like 2 or 3 of you. I'm glad for that. A decade or so ago, she was a best-selling Christian author. A lot of books for women, a lot of conferences. She was a very popular conference speaker. And then around 2016, she came out openly in favor of the LGBTQ lifestyle. And then, of course, she kind of became this lightning rod. But she continued to tell the rest of the world that she's a Christian. She's inside the Christian world. So she continues to write. She continues to sort of get in all of these arguments about God's view of sexuality and homosexuality. So this is Jenn Hatmaker. This is who she has been, and this is who she has become. So in a recent blog post, she's still very popular in a lot of circles, and she still very openly self-identifies as a Christian. She wrote this after this whole Roe v. Wade's decision got leaked and published online. Listen to how this language works. Okay, so she is hardcore pro-choice. Self-identified Christian, hardcore pro-choice. When you read through this, ask yourself a few questions. What does she think? Where does she think responsibility belongs? Who is not responsible for anything? What kind of moral language does she not use when she gets angry at pro-lifers? And this is what she's doing. She's griping about pro-lifers. Because of this rabid energy, if someone's pro-life, they are rabid. Because of this rabid energy was genuine, if it had any integrity, it would come baked in with the fiercest and staunchest advocacy for free birth control, comprehensive sex education, maternal health care, paid maternity leave, subsidized child care, affordable housing, marriage counseling and family support system, guaranteed food security, victims' rights for all the rape and incest survivors forced to carry their abuser's baby, subsidized medical care for all the women forced to carry a baby to the detriment of their own health or that of their baby, life insurance for the families whose mothers died in forced childbirth, and every conceivable support for a mother, baby, and family from birth until forever. Who's responsible for a forced birth? Every other pro-lifer but the mom or the dad. Everybody else is. And we're supposed to advocate for and provide this list, this laundry list of angry vomit that she throws out in her blog post, right? So a self-identifying Christian cannot make herself talk about sexual ethics or what even leads to pregnancy. She just can't do it. They can't do it. Because then that shifts the burden of responsibility, right? But she can blame everything on and place all responsibility on those who believe that life is valuable from conception. So if you just believe that, then you are supposed to, and I love that line, guaranteed food security for the rest of their lives. Do you know there's no such thing? There's literally no such thing. Anything catastrophic could happen at a single moment, and even the most wealthiest nations could find themselves in food insecurity. There's no such thing. But she, of course, demands it. Or you could become pro-choice, and then all of that responsibility just magically goes away. A self-identifying Christian is utterly ignorant of the thousands upon thousands of Christian nonprofits and churches who do a lot of what she listed. A lot of churches and nonprofits spend a lot of time and money and effort doing everything they can to help moms and families and kids through this process. Millions upon millions upon millions of dollars just in the U.S. alone are spent on doing exactly all of that. But what you'll notice in this debate, if you track it, if you read it, if you listen to it, pro-choicers are completely ignorant of the pro-life world. They're ignorant of the arguments, they're ignorant of the science, and they're ignorant of the world that pro-lifers live in and actually advocate for. Self-identified Christian though, right? Self-identifying Christian is unaware of several realities that do not change because you express your political opinions upon them. I demand that you provide this. I demand you provide it. Because you disagree with me, I demand that you provide this. So you can shake your fist all you want to. You're not going to be able to create some of these things, right? So you notice inside of this, the vitriol, the anger, the lack of connection to reality, and every emotional trick in the book pulled to try to tell pro-lifers how rotten they are, how horrible they are. In some of my conversations with some of you guys over the last few days, you've read where pro-choicers are calling the pro-life position satanic. They're literally using the word satanic of the pro-life position. So this is going wacko, but I gave you that quote from Carl Trueman on purpose. He said, this is the worldview now. This expressive individualism, the triumph of the therapeutic is another technical phrase. It's been an important phrase sort of in worldview criticism since the late 1960s. There's a whole book written on it. But the triumph of the therapeutic, the rise of the expressive individualist, has taken all of reality and all meaning and subsumed it underneath personal preference and personal choice, right? So we see these crazy things happening, and part of what we're trying to do in these Tuesday nights is figure out why it's happening. And this is a lot of why it's happening. Yeah. You are correct. This is a very privileged Western worldview. So if you need technology, if you need expensive technology, change yourself from a male to female, who has access to that technology? Well, the wealthy and powerful do. The relatively wealthy and powerful do. So if science is telling us something, science is telling us that if you have wealth and power, you can do whatever you want to, right? This is part of this shtick with this entire worldview, is that it is a privilege of decadent, wealthy people. Normal people around the rest of the globe, this is not on their radar. And these other religions, it's not on their radar. They would find this as disgusting, if not more disgusting, than a lot of Christians would. Yes, this is a privilege of wealthy Westerners typically. You're absolutely right. So these are some of the things going on in the world around us. And again, why this is going on in the world around us, right?